Good morning, guys. It's Monday, so getting back at it out here, and it is going to be a brutally hot day today. I think it's going to get up right around 100, and then with the heat index, who knows? Just way too hot. Let's put it that way. So it's already, you know, I've been at it a little bit this morning. Already been here for over an hour, I guess, but been just doing things around the shop, getting ready for the day, and getting guys set up to get some things taken care of. I went ahead and crated up all my hickory right here. Went ahead and processed up a couple live decks of hickory. So we got 10 baskets right here filled up. I just needed to clean this slab off so I could run. I'm gonna run some mixed hardwoods, which is something we don't really sell a lot of, but it's just anything that's not oak, hickory, or cherry, essentially, but still a hardwood. I've got some maple, I've even got some sweet gum, and just some other miscellaneous junk, really, to be honest, that we don't really sell a whole lot of. But it makes decent firewood at a lower price point for some people that just want to, burn, whether it be for camping or recreational burning around the house, or I mean, goodness, you could burn in your fireplace as well with it. But got the rest of the little hickory resplits right here, so he'll be crating those up. So I think I'll end up with about 12 baskets, 4 of which are the tall 330 baskets out of those 2 live decks. So that'll be nice. We'll get that taken care of. Go ahead and get this. This is our little pile that I've got of some mixed hardwoods right here, and then I've got a few more down that way, and I just want to get that taken care of. And then later today I'm gonna be pulling the wedge out, and I definitely want to show you guys that. I'll be pulling the wedge out. I'll show you guys how easy it is to pull the wedge out. It definitely helps to have a second operator just pulling it out with the skid steer, but it's just one bolt that comes out of that wedge right there, and I'll show you guys in detail later on. But we'll be pulling the 16-way wedge out, putting my little deflector in there, and running this smaller diameter stuff and making it into 24-inch length wood. So be taking care of that later on today, and you guys follow along, and we'll get going here in just a minute. So I got them all moved over here, and I got that live deck loaded up. So we don't have a whole lot of this. We don't get much of this. This is just something that, they'll occasionally throw one on a tractor trailer or something that, and it's probably just honestly the guys that are loading it on either on the job site or off the log yard that just make a mistake. Decent bit of poplars, some sweet gum. Might be a little bit of maple in here. Just a few other little species here and there, but we'll get this run processed up, and then I'm going to crate this and get this out of the way over there, and then we're going to switch and start running some small diameter stuff that is just kind of a little bit aggravating to run into finished 16-inch wood, because a lot of times that small stuff, it just doesn't fall into the splitter trough straight, and you're fighting it over making you're not making a whole lot of wood, and it's a constant battle to get it to fall in. So it's not worth it to try to make it into regular wood, in all honesty. It's just, so what we're going to do, we cut it into 24-inch lengths. You can't split it on the processor because the stroke is not quite long enough to do that. It just leaves it, probably 20-inch would be like kind of the max you'd want to be splitting on the processor. But with this skinny stuff, it'd be just it just wouldn't be worth the time. So we'll be doing that here later today, and then all we just run it into a trailer in rounds, and then back that over to one of our log splitters, and just that's how we split it down. But every piece, needs to be cut either in half or quarters. Nothing that's too big a diameter, so it's not too big a deal. It's definitely our most labor intensive product that we sell, but we sell it at a pretty good premium, and we feel like it's worth doing. It's almost one of those things that we might not do for much longer after we we really run the numbers on it and see see what we think about it. But we've got quite a few customers that are kind of hooked on that 24-inch wood. They've either got, you know, large fireplaces or fire pits that they kind of want that larger piece to be able to throw in there, so they don't have to throw quite as many in at once. So, you know, I don't know. We got guys that like it for sure. So, but we'll get going here and get this mixed hardwood processed up, and then we'll switch over to that here before too much longer. All right, guys, so that last log there was the representation. That was a real small one. I mean, it was, I think, a sweet gum, but they just turn in there sideways and they end up kind of, I mean, you just don't end up making good finished wood out of it, and it takes a lot longer than running like a bigger diameter log. So I mean, that one fell in okay, but you may have seen how it kind of twisted them sideways as it was going through the splitter and stuff like that. So that's why we make this 24-inch wood out of that small stuff. I just wanted to load that one on there just to kind of show you guys. And it was a, you know, a non, you know, not a hickory or an oak, which is what we make all of our 24-inch wood out of. So we'll go ahead and get this wedge pulled out now here in just a minute, and then we'll start cutting that, and I'll show you what we do. I just put a little deflector, and you'll understand what I'm talking about once we pull this wedge out, and then we just run that straight up into a dump trailer, and then we'll you know, split that into finished get going on that here in just a second. So before we pull that wedge out, I just wanted to show you guys what we wound up with over here. And this stuff, the logs have been sitting for a little while. We kind of let this stuff build up, so it gets a little bit softer. And these softer hardwoods, they don't hold up as well over time. So you might see a little bit of punky wood in here, but this is something we don't like deliver. This is not a premium product of ours by any means. This is just something we sell, just picked up here at the yard, you know, in the basket. So we'll rotate the basket into a truck or trailer or whatever. It's just to save some people some money. Some people like to get it for cheaper, and we like to have whatever anybody might need. So it ends up making not the prettiest looking wood by any means, especially with some of this sweet gum in here and stuff. But we do find, and this is a little tip, and I want to know if y'all feel the same way. If you let the sweet gum sit for a little bit, it makes it a lot easier to split. Like if I had tried to split some of that sweet gum green through that 16 way, sometimes it'll stop it. I've had that happen plenty of times in the past, and but if you let that stuff sit for a few months, something about it just makes it a little bit easier to split. So let me know if you guys have had the same results, or you know, that's a little tip for you guys if y'all are having trouble splitting sweet gum, if y'all even want to. I mean, most people don't want to. We don't really want to, but you know, we don't mind it getting a little bit punky just to be able to run it through, versus just throwing it away essentially. So but yeah, that's the pile there, and we'll get this wedge pulled out and start running some 24-inch wood here in just a minute. Let's see, this is our resplits that made, and I knew it was just going to be a few, so we just parked this truck under here. Most of that honestly doesn't even need resplitting, so just a couple resplits is all it made, so that's good. And then I'll get this crated up and out of the way, but like I say, the 24-inch wood will never even make it over here, so it's not a rush. I don't have to get that cleaned up right now. We'll do that some other time. That'll probably make about six or seven crates if I had to guess. So, but we'll get this wedge pulled out and get running here in just a minute. we're gonna get this wedge swapped out. So all you need to do it, you just gotta have 1.5 inch. We got an 1.5 inch impact, of course, and then an 1.5 inch wrench. I mean, you could do it with 2 wrenches if you had to, but all you gotta do is pull that bottom bolt out. You can see it right there. They call that a boomerang. That's what raises and lowers the wedge. It's attached to a cylinder on the other end, and you just take that out. Take the bolt loose, and then I'll take a little bit of tension off of it with a skid steer from up top. There's a little spot you can hook a chain into up here. Take a little tension off it, pull the bolt out, and then all we gotta do is just pull the wedge right out. And then I'll show you the little deflector that we made to make it where we can just deflect pieces around the stop that's behind the wedge, essentially, so that we can make this 24 inch cut.
This is all it is. We just welded up something that kind of fills the same space as the wedge, and you can imagine it goes in just like this, and you know, it'll push the rounds right into this round tubing, and they'll fall off either side.
Yeah, it's just to prevent it from getting stopped right there on that flat piece, you know. So we just want it to deflect those full length rounds to one side or the other.
So it fits in just like this, and then we just pin it on the bottom with a couple pins. There's nothing really trying to pull it out as we use it.
And I mean, some people might think, well, why don't you just open the eject door over there and just slide them out that way? Well, the reason being is just there's just not enough length. There's always, I mean, before we cut all this off, and even now, they just won't, a 24 inch cut just will not fit through right here. Another thing we have to do is take our log stop off in order to make this happen as well. That's something I wasn't even really thinking about. We haven't cut any 24 inch wood since we had that log stop attached there. So we'll probably just take the 4 bolts out of the back side of the log stop there and just get it in a spot where it can sit until we're done with this. This is just something we do, you know, maybe a couple times a year, and that's it. So it's not a huge pain. All right, guys, so that's all there is to it. It did take a little bit. We've never set up to do the 24 inch with this 40-foot conveyor here, but I just wanted to try it. This building pole's a little bit in our way. I wish we could get our conveyor a little bit further out, but I think we're gonna make it work. We've got to, but I mean, it is a long drop for those rounds, but I don't think it'll be, once we get a few of them in there, of course, then it's just hitting on the round, so I don't think it'll do any damage or anything. No more than there is already to this trailer anyways. This thing's dipped out. This is an older load trail dump trailer, and they didn't build them with quite as heavy of floors back when we got this one, so it's got some dips in it, but it's fine. It's not like it's about to break or anything. So we've got this thing set up now, so the deflector's in place there of the wedge like we showed you, and then I went ahead and pulled that log stop off, and I've just got it laying on the ground because it is going to actuate back and forth. And I did have to take one of the lines loose because it doesn't fit through the gap there between the cab and the you know, the existing splitting trough that's still attached there. So it comes close to fitting, but not quite. So just had to disconnect the line, just reconnect it. Not a big deal there. So yeah, we're all set up, and I'll get making some 24 inch wood. I've still got to load the live deck, but all the logs are right over there. They're all just real small diameter stuff, and I'll get this loaded up and we're doing this just because right now I'm out of logs and I need some work for some of my guys this week. I like to have just kind of, that's kind of what firewood is for everyone other than, you know, myself and my brother. It's kind of just any free time that we have, we can have someone working on resplitting some firewood or doing whatever we need firewood wise. At least when it comes to producing, of course, delivering is a whole nother story, but when it comes to producing, it's just kind of like, you know, being it's either myself or my brother running the processor. You know, the other work is kind of just fill in type stuff that we have, which is nice. It's nice to have, you know, to where we can keep everybody working and keep everybody doing something productive. So, but I'll get going here in just a minute and making some of those 24-inch cuts. I'm gonna go ahead and get the live deck loaded up with some of this smaller stuff, and then we'll get cutting some of this 24-inch length stuff. All right, guys, well, everything is loaded up. That was all the logs that we had over there, all those smaller diameter logs, and I went ahead and just pulled it forward and just threw in the couple that had fallen on the ground here. Always lose a couple of these rounds when I try to fill a trailer this much. So that's a good full 7x14 dump trailer there. A good amount of, I mean, we don't sell a whole lot of that 24-inch length stuff, but we like to have a good bit of it. And those logs being in that diameter, as long as they've been sitting, they're pretty dang dry already. They've been here a while. And then we've got a good stock of stuff that's already been split for, gosh, I've probably been split 10 months now at least or so. So we're ready for the cold weather to hit for sure, with all different species and varieties of wood that we stock. But yeah, this is where that 24-inch wood was, so it's all cleared out now. And we've had some guys that were bringing us a good bit of that stuff, but the supplier we have now that brings us the majority of our wood doesn't really bring us hardly any of that. So which is fine. We don't want a lot of it, and it's a hassle to turn into actual finished wood off the processor, so that's why we do it this way. It's impossible to split it at 24-inch lengths on the processor. The maximum I would say you could go would be 20 maybe. Yeah, I'd say about 20, and you'd be fighting every piece doing that even. So that's why we do this 24-inch this way. But you know, most of this stuff just needs to be split 2 or 4 ways. I mean, you know, a piece like that, it's real small. You know, a piece like this, you know, just in half. A piece like that in fourths, you know, fourths right there. But it'll make some good looking wood when it's all said and done. We'll just be putting this straight into IBC crates right off of the splitter, and we'll be taking care of that probably the majority of it tomorrow. So I think that's going to wrap this one up though. I appreciate you guys watching. Catch you on the next one.